It's been an incredibly busy news day in the NHL. All kinds of updates as well, including future international competition, including the World Cup and Olympic participation. And we got news from the NHL waiver wire. Gary Bettman made comments on the players facing charges from the 2018 World Juniors Championship scandal that's now entering the court phase of its battle. Plus, we also have some trade rumors today revolving teams like the Ottawa Senators and their pursuit of Chris Tanev. Could we see a big deal between the Kings and the New York Rangers? And the LA Kings have also fired head coach Coach McLellan. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have another busy day here of news in the NHL. Once again here on the road, we're recording from a hotel room, so trying to get caught up on all the day's events. Of course, we saw a trade earlier today. Our second one well ahead of the deadline, this time with Sean Monahan being traded to the Winnipeg Jets. Cheval Dayoff, the GM of the Jets, emphasized the urgency after the Elias Lindholm trade to the Canucks, kind of becoming an arms race, if you will, knowing that there's not a ton of centers on the market, and the Jets really wanted to add one. After Lindholm, who they were involved in the talks on, ended up going to their rivals, the Canucks. They had to pounce and get something done. So they went after Monahan with a good offer for the Habs. They didn't need salary retention, gave them what they wanted, and got the deal done, got the player. So we're bound to see some other deals ahead of the deadline as well. We'll see how things pick up. Now attention in the center market turns to guys like Adam Henrique, maybe Scott Lawton. Lawton's not necessarily going to get moved, but the Flyers will have options given the fact that, like I said, it's a thin market. But the bigger news that came later today after the trade this afternoon was the LA Kings announcing they fired head coach Coach McLellan. You never would have guessed that early on in the season. The Kings were looking like they might be a bit of a juggernaut, off to a phenomenal start in the first 20 games. But in the last 15 to 20 games, they've really fallen off, come on some hard times. Goaltending has suffered, defense has suffered, goal scoring has suffered. It's really been a bit of everything. They did finish the last game for the All-Star break with a win, but not enough. The Kings and Rob Blake today announced that they've removed McLellan as head coach, which I was a little bit surprised. All the insiders were saying that he didn't really want to do it, and that they might go after the All-Star break and see what happens before they make a move. But they decided to fire McLellan. Jim Hiller, assistant coach, takes over and will be an interim coach for the rest of the year. So we'll see if that kind of shakes and wakes things up in LA, but certainly not something we were expecting. I mean, it's kind of expected in a way considering the recent results, but based on reports, it certainly sounded like it was quite surprising. So the Todd father is out. Jim Hiller is in. On the waiver wire today, the New York Islanders today placed forward Julian Gauthier. So, of course, he in his last two games, I believe it was a healthy scratch in one of them and bench for a good chunk in the other. Again, a player who's bounced around a lot, guy who has good speed, good size, but the skill level and necessarily to be productive enough to at the NHL level has been inconsistent. So he goes on waivers, and the Islanders will have an opportunity to demote him if he clears. We'll see if another team picks him up. Also, a very busy day at the All-Star game, of course, as Gary Bettman, we knew he would be making comments this afternoon, making remarks and taking questions from the media. Lots of announcements today. We had Gary Bettman in unison with the Marty Walsh, the director of the PA, as well as Luc Tardif from the International Ice Hockey Federation, all confirming some international events coming up. The 2025 version of the World Cup, which we knew probably wouldn't be called that, is going to be called the Four Nations Face-Off, and will feature Canada, United States, Sweden, and Finland. Games will be hosted in Montreal and Boston. They will be doing basically everybody will play everybody in a round robin, so a 3-game round robin. And then the top 2 teams will go directly to the final for a 1-game showdown for tournament championship. So that's going to be like a watered down version of the World Cup because of some countries not being able to participate in international events right now. They did say that they're meeting next week, the IIHF is, as far as discussing how to handle Russia moving forward. Are they going to allow them to participate in next year's events? They're going to continue the ban or what have you. They couldn't answer that question. They're meeting next week to decide that. They basically will decide 1 year at a time. But the bigger, more important news was that Bettman, the PA, and the IIHF all confirmed 100% that the NHL players will be participating in the next 2 Olympic Winter Games at the very least. It could continue and beyond that. For right now, they have an agreement for 2026 and 2030. 2026 event will be be in Italy. 2030 will be in France. And that's great news. We're actually going to get to see, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, and all these players that are, top players in the world be able to represent their countries and compete best on best internationally, which we've been robbed of for quite some time. So obviously that's phenomenal news. I know the players are thrilled. And they also announced, even though it's not confirmed, they do want to have a full-scale normal World Cup and in between those Olympic years as well, so that every 2 years there will be an international event. Of course, like I said, that's not firm and planned because it's too far out. Essentially, they get this four-nation face-off, which will take place for 2025. Then they'll begin the phases of planning the next two World Cups. So that would be in between the Olympics. So we'd have basically 2028 and then 2032. So every 2 years. So you'll have 2025 an event, 2026 because of the 2024 one getting bumped out a year. And then you'll have 2028, 2030, 2032. And hopefully nothing changes to keep that going every year because it's highly entertaining for the fans. The players love it. They want it to represent their countries, and it's been missing from the game for too long. You really want to grow the game around the world. I think it's very important. So hopefully we do get to see that. So Bettman was also asked, of course, about the World Junior players from the 2018 team that are facing charges. I wasn't sure how much he'd be able to speak on it today. Essentially, it sounds like the NHL will put out more formal statements after the London police make their announcements on Monday. But for right now, obviously Bettman did speak on it and indicated that the league had a lot more information than the teams did. He said the teams probably only knew what players told them based on the teams who had players on that team. And obviously I'm sure they interviewed them and asked what they knew and didn't know, etc. But beyond that, the league had a lot more information. Obviously talked about the fact that the leagues had their report ready. And it sounds like the players that are on leave right now, their status might not change. He said essentially there's not much point in suspending them per se. They're all players that are on expiring contracts, and the bulk of those contracts have been paid. The way they're only paid to the end of the regular season, so really, like, they've probably earned 2/3 to 3/4 of their pays already. Is there really any point in doing anything? It's not really going to do much damage to them, much of a repercussion in that sense. So ultimately, they're probably going to remain as non-roster players for the rest of this current season. We'll see what happens, but they're all going to be on expiring deals. It's unlikely that they get a chance to be re-signed and get a chance to re-enter the league unless they go through the trial process and are found not guilty. Which at this point, I know I can't say what's going to happen because we don't know. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't even matter what you know and what you don't know in a court case. It depends on what can be proven with the right evidence. So we'll see how everything plays out. I know a lot of people have their minds made up that these reports and the evidence don't make things look too good for the players, but we got to remember as well, like I said, you are innocent until proven guilty, and we'll have a right to defend themselves in the court of law and see where things go. But ultimately, Bettman said he cannot see a scenario where those players would likely be able to play while the legal process is ongoing. And considering the trial may not even start until 2026, even if they were going to go through the trial and be found not guilty, you're probably looking at 2027 as a potential earliest return. We're 2024. These players at the very least are likely going to miss 2 years of their career. And of course, if they're found guilty, they could be looking at jail time and miss a lot more, and their careers are likely over at that point. It is expected, based on information from TSN and Rick West, that it will be one trial. They'll all have their separate legal counsel, but it's going to be one trial, and we'll find out here at the end. But it's going to be a long haul. It really will be before we really know what they're looking at. Like I said, we found out yesterday, based on the court documents that TSN got their hands on, that it looks like Michael McLeod's facing additional charges compared to the other four. So it looks like he might be considered player one, which was the victim who's referred to as EM, and the court documents might be the player that was originally connected to her before he invited his teammates to partake in the events that went down that night. So we'll see where things go. I know the players are proclaiming their innocence, and we'll see. But that's the statement from Bettman so far. Like I said, Monday will be a big day for police investigation press conference, and I would imagine the NHL will put out statements afterwards. But Bettman described what he knew from the NHL's investigation as being reprehensible. So it sounds like they know a lot, and obviously that they're discussed it with what they were able to find out in this investigation. So we'll let the legal process play out and discuss it as we learn more pertinent details on the trial. Now, the other thing that did come up in conversation today with Bettman and the PA and everybody when they were on the podium was the Arizona Coyotes and expansion. Bettman went on to talk about the fact that a lot of teams have expressed, or not teams, but cities have expressed interest in expansion to get teams. He mentioned several. One surprising city was, I believe he mentioned Cincinnati. Talked about Kansas City, talked about Atlanta, Salt Lake City. Obviously he was asked about Quebec City as well. Again, he said, if they want to put their name forth go through the proper process if and when they open the expansion process formally, then that's up to them. But all kinds of interest by the sounds of things around the league. I know Marty Walsh, the director of the Players Association, didn't have too many good things to say about the Coyotes and their pursuit of a new arena. He says that they've already missed 2 deadlines given by the league to have their formal plans in place for a new arena. And he himself didn't sound too happy, confident that they're going to get things done. Ultimately, he says it's a disgrace, not his exact words, but disgraceful, basically, what the level of, that the players are dealing with there for the facilities, and it's, not anywhere close to an NHL arena, etc. So they're quite anxious, the PA is, to get a resolution, and they're kind of getting fed up with it. He kind of had a lot of choice words for the Coyotes organization to how they're run, and the fact that they can't get it together to get an arena deal. Bettman, of course, did still express some confidence, saying Alex Muriel told me we're going to get it done, and he's still confident he will. But time is running out. If they've already been given 2 deadlines that we really weren't aware of until now and failed to meet them, what's going to happen if they continue to do that? It can't go on much longer. Like I said, it was in May when it was announced the Winnipeg Jets being relocated, which is the last time that's happened, when they came back from Atlanta. So we'll see. The PA's not happy, though, where things are at, and they want something done, and they want it done quickly. Now, on the trade rumor section of the day, of course, like I said, it's already been busy with the deadline getting closer and closer here. We're still about a month away, and things are already heating up. We have already seen a Lindholm move and Monahan. Who's going to be next? Like I said, on the center market, you're looking at guys like Adam Henrique, Scott Lawton, maybe Boone Jenner in Columbus is another name. Lawton and Jenner come with a little bit of term, though. So we'll see about those guys. There's not a lot of other UFA centers on the rental market, though. So we'll have to see where things go on that front. But one name that's still actively out there and hot topic, and I don't think the Flames are going to want to take too long to make a deal. There's speculation it could happen over the next couple of days, but it just depends on when the right offer comes along. But Chris Tanev is the next one, likely domino to fall with Calgary. I think the Flames will hang on to Hanifin a little longer. They would really like to keep him if they can, so I think they'll continue trying. So we've seen him, of course, now move Lindholm. They signed Backlund, of course, early in the offseason, like at the end of the offseason, first of the season there. You get Hanifin, of course, and you've got Tanev. There's some word about Markstrom, maybe, but it's believed that the Flames will have to get an enormous offer to even go to him and talk to him about his no-move clause. So is it possible Markstrom goes? Sure, but it's not as likely. Dan Vladar might be a more likely scenario if they get the right deal. But again, that's debatable too. The NHL reporters have been saying that lately there hasn't been a ton of interest in him. But when it comes to Tanev, still, again, a lot of interest from teams like Toronto and Ottawa, both being mentioned. I know the Canucks were still interested. I don't know if they want to give up yet another first-round pick, because for them it would have to probably be a first because they're a division rival, but it's believed that the asking price around the league was a second-round pick and a top prospect. The Leafs don't have a second-round pick for a few years, so they'd have to probably upgrade into a first. They may not want to do that as much as they like the player. They might see that as being an overpayment for a team that's not maybe as strong this year than they thought. So I don't know if the Leafs want to go down that road or not, but that's probably what cost them if they wanted to do it. From the Sens perspective, they could certainly do it. They have a lot more draft picks. They have 2 first-round picks, so they could move one of them. One of them could end up being the Bruins pick, which came via Detroit in the DeBrincat deal. It'd be a really late first-round pick, but it's probably a little higher value, more coveted than a second-round pick would be. If they want to throw in that and maybe another defenseman like an Eric Brandstrom, I think they could probably consider a real strong offer to the Flames. Of course, that would be contingent on Tanev signing an extension. The Sens are keen on getting a good Pro D in there to help stabilize things for the rest of this year, even though it's not looking real good by the math here to get him into the playoffs this year. They kind of want to sell Tanev on the future and him being a big part of things getting turned around and maybe making the playoffs and next year and beyond. So we'll see where they go from there. But the Sens believed to be able to put together a real good pitch, and we'll see. But I think Brandstrom, a second-round pick and a prospect. I mean, you look at their prospect pool, it's not the deepest right now, but they could move a guy, whether it's Igor Sokolov or maybe it's a guy like Lassie Thompson, who I know they're definitely willing to move, or anything of that nature. So we'll see. But the Sens are still very much in the mix there. Other teams too. They're not the only ones, but the Canucks, Leafs, and Sens have been getting the most attention and talked by reporters, but I'm sure there's probably at least another 3 or 4 teams at least in there. He's a hot commodity for sure. And another big deal that I was reading about earlier that reportedly being talked about is the Rangers and Kings maybe hooking up on a deal. The Rangers are looking at a variety of things. There's some talk that they may be looking to swap some younger players with Los Angeles. We know the Kings, of course, like I said, have been struggling. Fired their coach today. Definitely looking to shake things up. Obviously, the LA Kings were interested in just kind of looking for a shakeup. I think just some change. You get what they have had wasn't working. The reported deal that I caught wind of through an NHL reporter's article earlier was Kaapo Kakko actually going from the Rangers to the Kings for Arthur Kaliyev and Alex Turcotte. Now, we know Kaliyev is definitely a player looking to get a different opportunity, move on out of LA after kind of falling out of favor. Alex Turcotte's been dealing with a ton of injuries. We saw him finally get his first NHL goal. Highly touted prospect about 3 years ago, but it's kind of, lost his swagger, so to speak. So we'll see. I don't know if that's a deal that ended up happening. It's not a huge deal. I know for the Rangers, they get a different kind of young winger, and Kaliyev, who's has an opportunity to be more of a sniper shooter mentality, different kind of player than Kakko. I don't know how eager they would be to move Kakko. I think it's going to be if they get an offer that they really feel like they can benefit from immediately, and I don't know that that's it, but that is speculation that those two teams have had talks. There's also some talks that the Rangers kind of considered a reunion with Pavel Buchnevich if they can make it work. There is some speculation they've inquired with the Blues. The Blues don't have to move Buchnevich. He's not a pending UFA or anything like that, but there is some talk that Doug Armstrong might consider more of a shakeup within that team. They're in a wild card spot right now, but as we know, he's not afraid to make moves. Doug Armstrong, if he doesn't think his team has enough to win the cup or go deep, he's not afraid to move some assets and to go with a different mix. So, again, another player that the Rangers may be looking at there as well for potential reunion. So, whether it be Buchnevich or the Kings, we know the LA Kings are probably looking at some goaltending options too. There was some talk yesterday about Marc-Andre Fleury. Be curious to see if that develops into anything or not as well. So, lots of things heating up. The All-Star Game skills comp is going on tonight, so lots of fun around the NHL, lots of talk. Obviously, still a very, very busy news day, even though it's been a bit of a time to showcase some skills and have some fun around the NHL. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors. Of course, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. We'll discuss it further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe, stick around so you don't miss anything, and I'll catch you next time.